Hey Jamie, this video is for you. I'm not a professional YouTuber, so I'm going to screw some things up. I'm going to say and but hopefully you'll be able to get through this and have a little bit more knowledge for naming your movies and TV shows. So what I've done is I have acquired, let's see, what did I just do here? I have acquired a couple versions of the movies you're having issues with. And I think I discovered why you might be having a problem, because you might have this as Godzilla vs. Kong 2021 4K .mp4 or mkv. I'm going to show you what Filebot can do. So let's first of all go to this, and I'll show you that Godzilla vs. Kong at both TMDB and IMDb have the same year, as does Godzilla King of the Monsters. And you mentioned it as King of the Monsters. I hope you have it as Godzilla King of the Monsters, and of course any colon has to be removed from the proper file name. So that's listed the same at both databases too. Real quickly, I'm going to touch on Plex's naming guide for movies. They don't really give you a lot of information about putting extra file characteristics into the file name, besides where it tells you how to do a part 1 or a part 2. You'll see there's an official separator of space dash space here. If you go to this resource, Plexopedia, they give you examples of how to put different versions of the same movie on your server. And this area here can be used for more descriptive things like H.265 or H.264. You can have 5.1 with even the type of audio codec that your file uses, so that you can just glance at your file name and know, okay, so this is a 7.1 audio file versus a 5.1 audio, or maybe the container has both. But this is where you can get descriptive, because Plex won't read past this point. Or, let's see where it is, it won't read past this point when making a database match to TMDB. And again, the secret sauce also uses the TV database and IMDB, but I believe they're a lower priority than TMDB. But you can use the database number for IMDb in the same way. I don't have Filebot set up that way, which we'll get to in a second. Can't forget TV shows. They updated this sometime recently, and I didn't realize it at first, but this little paragraph here tells you how to put extra information into the file name for a TV show. So you've got your Band of Brothers show in your Band of Brothers folder in a subfolder marked Season 01, and some people disagree, but it's always a subfolder of Season 01 and not Season 1, because the code here is Season 01 and not Season 1. It may work fine with a subfolder labeled Season 1, but who knows if it'll work 2 or 3 library updates down the road. So I'm a stickler for that folder being named Season 01 or Season 02. There's a few shows at the TV database that don't have seasons listed that way, and instead by year. The Ken Burn films are that way. That would be Season 2010, Season 2021. So this would literally be S2021E01 for the first episode in that series of that season. So you'll see how we're using the official separator between file parts, space dash space. It's between the show title, the episode and season code. It's between that and the proper episode name. And then all you need after the proper episode name is a space and then any extra information in brackets. Filebot can do this too. Sonar can be set up to name this way. Radar can be set up to name how Filebot names for movies. It's all pretty easy once you realize what the format has to be. So let's go back to the movies. So I have a subtitle here. I don't know what type it is. So I'm going to open it up. It opened off screen. And I can quickly see that it's got extra information for the hearing impaired in it. Filebot, fortunately, can tell different languages apart, but it has no idea whether a subtitle is a forced default or what's called an SDH for the hearing impaired. So now that I know it's a hearing impaired, I'm just going to pre-prep this file name by doing sdh.srt. So that's one. This one came from Usenet. This came from a torrent. This came from Usenet, and you'll see that the file name is all garbled. But if I open it, it happened off screen and I had to pause it so I don't have a copyright strike. This opened in VLC, and you'll see that I've got some embedded subtitles already in the file. So unlike the previous one that came with an external subtitle, this one has it inside the container file. So now we've got another version of a movie, and this has an external subtitle, so I'll open that up again. And again, we see it's for the hearing impaired, so I can pre-label this. And then last but not least, this has no associated subtitle file, an external one, and if I check it in VLC, there's no internal subtitle. Another way to check for internal subtitles is to use MKV Toolnix. So this is for an MP4 or an MKV file, and you can open up the container and see what's inside it. You've got your video file, your audio file, a couple subtitles, chapter references, and the other stuff. Well, if this happened to have 16 subtitles for every language you could think of, like some web releases do from certain streaming services, you could literally uncheck them and then hit start multiplexing to get a new copy of this with these items deleted. And sometimes a subtitle might be mislabeled. Maybe you've got a acquisition that has a English and a Spanish audio track, but the Spanish one plays by default, and that simply means that they may be unlabeled. You see how it says EN here? Well, that references this setting for English, and if you have two unlabeled audio tracks, excuse me, you can reset the flags so that when it's opened in a media player like VLC or Plex, Plex can tell the audio tracks apart and play the correct one based on your language settings of your server. This is a little extra information, but MKV Toolnix is a great resource. So before we test Filebot, I have to do one more thing, one more explanation. For Filebot to be able to add those descriptive media file details, you need to install media info on your computer first if that's where you're running Filebot. It's a free program. There's a Windows version, a Linux version like I'm using, and a Mac version. And you get that here. So just get that installed. Otherwise, when we use these custom expressions, none of this area of the expression will work because Filebot needs media info to discover information about each media file. So I'll leave this on the screen for a second, but this is the expression we're going to be using to get the TMDB info into the file name. These were some of my earlier expressions. This simply gives a few of the file characteristic details, and the subt part of the expression lets Filebot look to see what language the subtitle is in. And here's a expression for your TV shows, and this matches up to TVDB even though by default Plex looks to TMDB, you can match to TMDB and Plex will bring this stuff in perfectly. There's also a way to add the database number to your TV show files, your TV show file names, but I haven't found that necessary to do because with a good match and a good file name, I've never had a TV show not match correctly. So I'll put these in the description of the video too, so you have that as a resource. So I'm going to rename these all at once. So on my Linux operating system, I can right click on the folder and choose Open in Filebot. There it is. So a few things first. Filebot can also look for missing subtitles if you create a free account at Open Subtitles. And if I'm not mistaken, you can connect to Open Subtitle 200 times each day to look for subtitles. So a free account is quite handy. And you simply connect your account with this little green icon here. So to use custom expressions in Filebot, you have to go down to this little paper kind of icon and choose Edit Preset, and then choose New Preset, give it a name, and fill this information out correctly. Well, I'll leave this on the screen for a second too. This matches what my other document had for the expression, and for a movie, our data source is going to be the movie database. Pick your language. I'm choosing rename. I haven't used Filebot to copy it to someplace else. I rename everything in place and then move it to my server. And then these are just the default settings. So now we'll show the TV expression. So here's the expression in this area, and the data source is the TMDB. And if you look, when you do movies, you have to be careful.
You have an informational message.
And pick the movie database here and not the movie database for TV. I could use Filebot to source my names from the movie database. I just choose the TV database instead. And the only thing different is sourcing from the movie database is going to put a year into both the file name and the folder name if you use Filebot to also set up your folders. I don't do that. So anyway, now that I explained that a little bit, there's one more option. I'm going to go over here to the little tool icon. Down at the bottom it says Post Process. I'm going to try to fetch a subtitle for the one folder we're missing a subtitle on. So I'll go down here and choose my movie expression. Filebot will do its thing. If it's confused about a movie, it might ask us a question. Sometimes if a new movie is in the IMDb database as whatever 2021, but it's in the movie database as whatever 2022, Filebot might get hung up and not find a match for that movie, or it might find a match suggestion and ask you to pick it. So right now, this one matched up to the proper movie, and you'll see how we're adding the file characteristic details. And I also found the language of the subtitle and knew from my addition of SDH that it's an SDH subtitle, and all it did was capitalize that properly. You'll see this one has, well, I forgot, they all have the database numbered, but this has file characteristics, and you'll see how this one's an H.264 encoded video and this one's an H.265, and then this movie is a 480p version with subtitle included. So all you do next is you hit rename, and this part is where you strip out illegal characters like a colon. If I hit validate, it'll remove the colon and I can continue. Close Filebot. Oh, I made a mistake. I closed Filebot too early. I told you I'm not a professional, so let's open up just this one in Filebot. I forgot to let it do its thing and look for subtitles. Even though it's properly renamed, I'm going to run it through again. And actually, my mistake is good because others will know what to do if they make a mistake like I just did. Okay, so it found the movie again, and I'm just going to click rename once more, validate it to remove the illegal character. And this time I'm not going to be in a rush. I'm going to wait and see what happens up here. So Filebot did not make a connection to open subtitles for a subtitle. So that was kind of a waste to do it again, but at least we know for sure. So if I go in here, this is how you would exactly put two movies on your server at the same time, one a 1080p version and one a 4K version, because they each have a unique file name, and Plex will find them as the same movie and give you the play version option before you play. You can also separate them out and use a custom poster if you wanted to have both listed in Plex. So that's basically Filebot with movies. Let me give you a demo on a TV show. So this is another example of subtitles. Here's an external subtitle, and let me start this and stop the play quickly. This MKV file also has a ton of embedded subtitles in it. And you'll see this one that says track 41 English, that's actually the external subtitle. And maybe a low power server, you might not want all those extra subtitles in the file. It's a little bit of work, but you could manually go through and unselect any subtitles you wanted, and then go down to the bottom and hit start multiplexing. And really this just unzips and rezips the container. It doesn't re-encode anything, so it happens fairly quickly. So now that it's complete, you'll see that I now have a duplicate file, and if I open that up with MKV Toolnix, it'll be short a few subtitles. So it's time consuming to strip out all those extra subtitles if your server is low power and that issue affects your server. Alright, so that's having both external and embedded subtitles with your media. Let's go to this show to rename. So I'll right click on it, open it in Filebot. Well, let's not do that. Let's show you another way. Let me just start Filebot. I can also just drag it in. So they're all here now. So the only thing I did is this special just said Cranford, making of Cranford, and I checked it at TMDB to see that it was the first episode of the special, so I gave it the SOOE01 just to let Filebot have a little extra help. And the same thing with the season 2 episodes that were labeled by my source as Christmas specials when TMDB has them as the first and second episode of season 2. So Filebot's not perfect, but if it doesn't work for you, usually check the entry at TMDB or TMDB to see why it's not working. And usually if you've got a match to those databases, it works perfect. So I'm going to go down here again, and I'm going to choose my custom TV expression. Filebot does its thing. Alright, so it got the season or the special episode correct, and then you can just double check everything renamed properly. Filebot determined that there's 720p videos in the H.264 format, 6-channel AC3 audio, and 6-channel AC3. I'm not sure why that's listed twice, but This is not a perfect video. So this is a flag, a settings flag that stays set until you change it. So it's going to keep looking for subtitles until I turn it off. And I don't know if these media files have subtitles already in them. They do. They have an English and a Romanian subtitle track embedded already. So I'm going to see if Filebot will find a subtitle for us. Alright, so now it's fetching subtitles. It's done. And let's see what it found. Well, it didn't find any subtitles, so luckily they have embedded ones to start with. So you'll see how the extra information for a TV show episode is bracketed, just like Plex now wants it to be. So that's about it. That is how Filebot works for movies and TV shows, and you can name them multiple TV shows or multiple movies at once. I would suggest just sticking to one TV show, and if you have everything prepped right with my method, by having each season folder already set up and the episodes in that season folder, Filebot will just do it all easily. There are ways to use Filebot to not only rename the media and move it, but to also set up the main movie folder and the season folders for TV shows. That's not anything I've learned because that doesn't involve my workflow. Sonar brings most of my TV shows in automatically and sets up those folder structures, and I acquire movies manually. It's my preference because I like to make sure I have a subtitle for everything. So anyway, hopefully this was helpful to you, and feel free to ask any questions.